Good afternoon, and welcome to today's webinar, Predicting the Future with PBCS. Before we get started today, just wanted to give you a little overview of eCapital as a whole. We are an Oracle Gold partner. We've worked with and serviced over 250 EPM and BI customers. On top of the EPM and BI work that we do, we also offer advisory services, strategic assessments, implementations, upgrades, training, and various other things from our firm. Here is just a little overview or a NASCAR slide of our big logos that we've worked with and partnered with. A lot of them from the Minneapolis area, but from all over the country as well. A little bit about myself. My name is Derek Wolhowe. I'll be taking you through today's webinar and today's content. I've been with eCapital for 3 years now. I've been on the forefront of cloud implementations, so I've done a couple of those and really been on the forefront of testing the new features and functionality that they come out with every month. So first, starting off, for those of you who don't know what PBCS is a subscription-based planning and budgeting solution, Oracle's cloud software. It's built and deployed on Oracle's cloud system. It provides a lot of flexibility to fit your planning or budgeting needs. So very customizable. And then also other benefits are the simplified interface, input process, as well as some light dashboarding to help your business processes. What is predictive analytics? Predictive analytics is a process that uses data mining and probability to forecast outcomes. So predictive planning, which the feature we're covering today, is Oracle's predictive modeling tool or feature within PBCS. Each model can obviously have many variables to influence your future results. There are seasonality models, non-seasonal models, to help get you to whatever prediction you're looking for to fit your data. And the bigger the sample size, the more accurate that prediction is going to be. So the more data we have or more data that becomes available, the more accurate your prediction is going to be. A small sample size doesn't give us enough, but we also want to keep it to relevant data. We don't want 10 years worth of data and you've changed a process in the last 3 or 4 years. So we only want that data. Here's just a cool graph that I found on the importance of analytics and where it's going in the marketplace today. You can see that mean line is right around that very important range for each of these different departments. Just shows you where predictive planning is going and how it's being leveraged today, a lot more than it was before, and it's only going to grow from here. Here's a few use cases for predictive analytics. I know you probably have some ideas in mind of where you might use these in your business today, but to just kind of give you a little overview here, seeding or forecasting your budget, you can paste that prediction. Any key performance or drivers that you're using can also be used in predictive analytics. So if you have something that's a key driver on your sales, you can use that to help predict your sales going forward. Any marketing or promotions, finding what sales really drive customers into the store. What is that breaking point? And then also helping with your pricing. What price brings in customers? What brings people back? So these are just some different areas that you can key in on and use predictive analytics to accurately budget and forecast your sales or expenses for the next 3 to 4 years. Here are some models or methods that Oracle uses and is built into the predictive planning feature. So just to I don't want to get too far into the weeds here since it is a bit statistical terminology and things like that. But there are, like I said, non-seasonal and seasonal methods. And looking at the non-seasonal signal moving average, this is a way to average the last several periods and project the last average value going forward. So it's best for volatile data with no trend and no seasonality. It's going to result in a straight line prediction. Again, each of these methods is going to be best for a different case of whatever your data looks like. So for your seasonal method, just to look at one of these, if we look at the Holt-Winters multiplicative, it calculates exponentially, smoothing values for level, trend, and seasonal adjustments to the forecast. So this is going to be best for data with a trend and with seasonality that increases over time. Again, just another method for projections. The RIMA is an autoregressive integrated moving average model. And this is a form of regression analysis looking to predict future movements by examining the difference between values in a series instead of using the actual data values. So it's determining the difference between the values. And this can take into account trends, seasonality, cycles, errors. So this is probably going to be the method that's used the most if you're trying to look at seasonality and trends and picking that out of your historical data. Also within predictive planning, you have your error measures, also another word for telling you how accurate your prediction is going to be. Your REMSE measures how much error there is between two data sets, comparing the predicted to your value that's observed or historical data. Your mean absolute deviation is going to be the average distance between each data value and the mean, and then your mean absolute percentage is just giving that value to you in a percentage. Again, this is expressing accuracy for how accurate your prediction is going to be. In today's webinar, there's going to be 3 different sections that we're going to go through. One is how predictive planning is integrated within the web, and then how it's integrated within SmartView, and then at the end, I'll give you 2 use cases of how to use predictive planning within a business process. So predictive planning with the web integration, this can assist with any statistical analysis that you're doing, can help compare historical data to future data and help predict that. Can also help identify seasonality within your data set, and then accurately predict for your budget or forecast based on that historical data that you have it looking at. It can then give you a best and a worst case scenario based on historical data trends. And ultimately, hopefully this is a feature that helps you ultimately hit your goals and more accurately and quicker. So the interface here, if you've used Typerion before, we have data input forms, and predictive planning is integrated into those data input forms. So to access predictive planning, you'd open up one of your input forms and then go to the actions drop down and select predictive planning. You can then see that below your grid or input form is now the predictive planning panel. You can see the arrows here is pointing to the hardware account, and it's signifying that based on the cell that we have selected in the grid, which is under Q3 for hardware, that's why hardware is appearing down in the panel below. So this is what we're doing our analysis on. If we were to select the cell for support, that's what we'd be doing our analysis for down in the predictive planning pane. So the pane will give you a chart, and then along the right here will be some data points telling you what the prediction growth rate will be, how far or below is your prediction compared to the growth rate you're actually projecting in your forecast. So coming to the next slide here, we've just enhanced the visuals to make it bigger and larger, easier for you to see here. So taking a look at the chart above, it's made up of 2 different panels here. That blue vertical line by August 14, you can see that that's dividing the chart. The green line to the left is all your historical data, and then to the right of that blue vertical line is your prediction section. So within that, you can see various different lines going on in there, and you can see the legend is identifying those lines for you. The blue line being your prediction line that predictive planning is creating for you, and your red line being your forecast working, so what you've predicted at this point. And then you have a best and worst case scenario lines as well. Then the images below is just giving you data points for based on the chart above. So your growth rate for your prediction line, what's your growth rate based on your forecast that you have inputted already, and then what's your growth rate for best and worst case. So another way to see more data based on the prediction that predictive planning is getting us is maximizing the predictive planning window. And you can see that maximizing this window gives us two more charts below the graph, giving us maybe what is our seasonality, our start dates for our historical range, and then our prediction details. So how accurate is our prediction? What error measure is it using? And what's that value? The best prediction method here is the damped trend seasonal multiplicative method. Within the web integration, all methods are selected, and so it's going to cycle through all those methods and pick that best method with the least amount of, with the best accuracy, I should say. And then it also gives us what is our start date and end date that we're trying to predict. What's the month total that we're trying to predict for? And in this case, it's 12 months from July 14 to June 15. Within the predictive planning pane, you have some settings that you can also change or adjust. On the left here, you can adjust your historical range. So again, the more data that you that is relevant, the more accurate your prediction is going to be. So right now, our historical range is going from FY10 to FY14. So 54 periods we're using for our historical range, and then we're using 12 periods as our prediction range. So we're predicting for 12 months total. And then on the right here, you also have some chart view settings that you can add lines or remove lines from your prediction section of the chart. Right now, we don't have the linear trend line or the growth curve line selected. So things you can adjust for your chart settings depending on your needs. Some other chart settings is you can also highlight seasonality. You can show the separator between the past and future data, that vertical blue line that I was talking about earlier. All these are selected right now. Again, you can adjust these based on your preferences, how you like to see the data in the chart. So I touched on seasonality a little bit. It's identified in the chart or the graph as these blue sections that the arrows are pointing to. This is signifying that there's a trend or seasonality in these sections. You can also see that it's displayed seasonality for 12 months. So every 12 months, there's a new trend. The chart below is not seasonal, so you don't see those blue bands signifying seasonality. So just a nice feature that it offers. There's a chart zoom button. This zooms in on the prediction section of your line graph. Just gives you more ease of seeing, all right, what is the line doing better than that just little section. You can also see easier, is my forecast within the best and worst case dotted lines. So just a nice enhancement to see the prediction section a little better. There's also object descriptions if you hover over a section of the predictive planning pane. So if you haven't used the predictive planning in a little while and forget what are the key indicators that we're looking at, you can hover over them and get a description of, all right, what is this data point or percentage giving me? What does this mean? So a nice benefit there that they've incorporated. Now here's the biggest benefit of predictive planning in my mind. So you've done your analysis, you've decided, hey, I like the prediction that they're giving me better than what I actually have as my forecast data. I'd like to maybe make that switch or use the prediction. They have a paste option where you can copy that prediction line and paste it into your forecast, whatever data that you are using. And you can copy the entire range or the first 6 months. It's really customizable here. You can also see that the members, you can also select just the current member you have selected. So in our case, it was hardware. Or you can say, I want to copy and paste that prediction for all members on my form. You can also paste the worst case or the best case. So a lot of different options here, but I think this is the biggest takeaway from this, is after doing that analysis, you can actually take that prediction data and copy it over to what your forecast scenario and version is sitting in. So a really nice feature. Another way to adjust the data in your forecast scenario would be within the chart. If you click on your forecast, in this case, forecast working line, it's going to then display the data points for each month, and you can drag and drop that line to be whatever data amount you want to change it to. So in this case, we're adjusting April 15. We're probably bringing it a little lower to be a little closer to that prediction line, since we maybe we're a little bit above it. So another way you can adjust the data within the chart. A few tips and tricks as you're getting started with predictive planning here is you must have a working version in your application. If you don't, it's not going to think that you're configured to use predictive planning. You also need to have data in your actual working scenario version. It takes your actual working, and that's what it uses as your historical data source. So if you only have data at actual final, it's not going to recognize that you have any historical data in your system. So you'd have to come up with a process to move that data over from actual final to actual working, so that it has a historical data to use for predictive planning. I just want to show you why you should have at least 6 months worth of historical data before you're using predictive planning. Again, the more data you have, the more accurate the prediction, if it's relevant data. But as you can see in the top chart, if you have less than 6 months of data, it's just going to give you a straight line prediction. If that's what you want, that's great. That's what it's going to give you. But as you can see down below, if we add 2 months more worth of historical data, that line is already going to change to more accurately represent the prediction based on your historical data. So just a tip going forward. An app or form setup here, the time access and non-time access must be prevalent in your form. So on your time access, you must have either a year and or period in your rows or columns to create that time access. So in our graph, we had year and period in our columns. And then in our non-time access, we must have a dimension other than scenario or version. So in our case, we had accounts in our rows to make our non-time access. A tip from me from working with predictive planning, I would say to identify your scenarios or versions to be used in the form, because those scenarios or versions in the form will be used for predictive planning. So in our case, we used the forecast working. So that's what was displayed in the form, and that's what you got used in the graph or line chart in the predictive planning. So, and that's what we can paste to. So if you want to paste to budget working, I would suggest identifying that to be used in your form ahead of time. So just something to think about as you're getting started with predictive planning. And then also to use the pasting or chart dragging to adjust values, all your columns and rows need to be expanded. So you can't have your quarters collapsed and your quarters showing. It wouldn't adjust the data if it's not expanded. And if your data or your chart is read-only, it's not going to allow you to paste or adjust data values either. It's just kind of a safeguard for yourself. Now we're going to get into the SmartView integration with predictive planning. Within PBCS, you can click on your name at the top right, and there'll be a download section, and here's where you'll be able to download the add-in for SmartView for predictive planning. And then if we go into SmartView or open up Excel, I should say, there's going to be a Predict button under the Planning tab in the ribbon. And if we click on that, it's going to open a Predict tab in the ribbon and give you all your different options for predictive planning within SmartView here. And as we take a look at this, you're going to find that SmartView is going to be a bit more robust and built out in terms of predictive planning in comparison to the web integration. So there's going to be a lot of different options to customize different things that you'll see here. So like in the web version, you're able to select your date range for what historical data you want to use. But if we look at this bottom middle window, you can also now in SmartView select what methods do you want to run your prediction for. So do you want it to be non-seasonal method, seasonal method? These were not options in the web integration. There's just a default value that it uses and it runs it for all of them, and it just picks the best method based on the error measures. And then also in SmartView, you can predict or pick what error measures you're using as well. So just a few different more options that makes your prediction more customizable to fit your needs. Once we've set up all our prediction options, we can then hit the Predict button, and it's going to run based on our selections. And then it's going to give us a chart very similar to the one you saw in the web integration. There's going to be a pop-out on the right side here, giving you the line chart that we saw before. Again, it separates that chart based on that blue vertical line for historical data to your left and your prediction section to the right of that. And then as you can see, your legend points out what lines are which. There's also another option in SmartView that allows you to create some comparison views. So before, or in this instance, right now we're looking at a plan working as our comparison to the prediction lines. If we wanted to add a different scenario and version combination to compare to the prediction line, we could do that here. So we could add our forecast final from last year or budget final from last year to compare to the prediction line, and then you'd be able to, it would then add that new view under your comparison views button, and you'd be able to toggle back and forth between those two charts or comparison views. Another thing that is added here in SmartView is you can create a report based on the chart, based on your prediction. This is just going to give you the data in a table set. So just a different way of seeing it. If you don't want to see it in a line graph, if it's more useful in a report view, it's going to give you all the data points for your best and worst case and the prediction. Also, it's going to give you some of the statistical data as well. So the number of data values, the max, min, the mean, any seasonality, and then it's also going to show the accuracy of the prediction and the error measure. So just a different way of seeing the data. And again, this is available in SmartView integration, but not in the web. Something else that's available in SmartView, but not the web, is this extracting data. It's going to extract the data and extract it to a pivot table of sorts. Again, another way just to see the data differently, so you can see all the data points. And if that's most helpful, that option is available here in SmartView for you. The paste prediction is also available in SmartView, just like it is the web. You can paste your prediction to your forecast scenario or whatever scenario you're comparing to the prediction. And again, you can do the entire 12 months or the first 3 months. Again, that's an option here for you as you're pasting the members from the prediction into your comparison scenario. So since we've looked at web versus SmartView integration, in my opinion, the web integration has a better interface and is more simplified. If you're looking to just do some light statistical analysis and maybe even seed your budget or whatever, and you don't have specific needs, I think the web integration is great because it's going to have all those default values picked for you already. If you need a little more customizable setup for your prediction options, the SmartView is the way to go. It's a little bit more robust and built out. It has those export and reporting options as well. And then it also is available in ad hoc. So if you're not limited to using a form, you can whip up a grid for whatever data points you want to predict on in ad hoc and use the predictive planning functionality with that. So that's also a benefit of the SmartView integration. So just to give you some use cases, I'm sure you have thought of some already as we're going through the process here, but just to kind of give you an idea of what predictive planning could be used for. In our first use case here, I'm going to just show you some seasonality, way you can, if your prediction is way too high or way below, how we can paste that and easily resolve some of those overestimating issues. So if we're taking a look here, you can see our product is computer mice for our sales accounts for the different regions. And if we enable predictive planning, we're going to see the pane below again, and we're going to see that our budget prediction is way above our prediction. It's projecting a 32% growth rate, and the prediction is predicting only about a 4%. So let's try and resolve that here. So again, the East is above, and then we can also see that for the UK, it's also well above. So maybe we want to just alleviate all the over-predicting or predicting overgrowth and for all regions. So we can easily do that with a couple clicks of the mouse. We can go into our paste prediction option, and we're going to copy our prediction into our budget working. We're going to do it for our entire prediction range, so for all 12 months, and we're going to do it for all members on our form, since we seem to be over-projecting on each region. And once we hit paste, we're going to see that now our UK, our prediction and our budget comparison is predicting a 0% growth rate. And based on our seasonality, that seems accurate now. So just an easy way that you can copy and paste the prediction for seasonality to incorporate seasonality into your budget working scenario. Another use case could be used for, say, a driver-based planning. Just set up this use case. In this scenario, our driver is going to be our gross margin. So if we input our sales for our budget working scenario, we're then going to use our gross margin as our driver to then get us to our cost of goods sold. So in this case, we have not even seeded our budget working scenario at all with any data. So we're just going to populate that with our prediction. So you can still use this paste prediction even though you don't have existing data there. So we're going to copy our prediction into our budget working for all our months and all our members on the form. So we're going to paste that, and sure enough, data is then populated for us, an easy way to seed your budget scenario. And let's save this data. The next in this use case would be to then predict our gross margin for each of our products. Once we can estimate what our gross margin is, we're going to then click save, and there's going to be a business rule running in the background. Like I said before, that's going to predict or calculate our cost of goods sold. So you can see on the left-hand side is our gross margin. We're going to predict that. And then on the rest of the columns is our cost of goods sold. So once we input our gross margin here, you can see down below that our cost of goods sold is populating after save with a business rule that runs on save. So a nice, quick, easy way to illustrate some driver-based planning and how you could easily use predictive planning within that process. And then if you had a cost of goods sold budget form that you could then massage your data even more if you really wanted to. But just want to point out down below that your prediction and your budget comparison are lining up right now based on the methodology that we've just used. So just something to point out, another way that you can incorporate predictive planning into your process. That's the end of our predictive planning content for today. Just a few things to point out that we're doing here at eCapital. We have a PBCS and EPBCS monthly update webinar series that gives you the monthly updates, and we've tested those monthly updates out for you. So it's a webinar that runs just before the monthly updates get pushed to your production environment. So we take the hassle out of testing those out for you and then giving you the knowledge of how that's going to affect your application here in the next month. So something that if you're interested in, certainly check us out on the website. We'd love to see you on a monthly basis. Another thing that we're doing here at eCapital is a live product demo coming December 15th. At the product demo, there's going to be a roundtable discussion. It's going to further explain what PBCS is, give you some of the key functionality, and help you determine if PBCS is right for you. And if it is right for you, give you some strategic strategies on how to move from on-prem to the cloud or just go straight to the cloud if you don't have any on-prem services already. So also incorporated in this is a hands-on demo. So you'll get your hands on within the PBCS application as well. So a really cool thing that we're doing here on December 15th. Would love to have you check it out and even attend if you're able. We did on-prem to PBCS migration for a client of ours, Meredith, and there's a case study out there on our website it's about a 5-minute video documenting our time with them and how we got them up and running from on-prem to the cloud migration. So a few testimonials of the people we worked with and what we did with them there. So check that out if you're at all interested in how someone made that jump and if you're looking to do the same. So that wraps up today's content. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. My email is provided. Again, my name is Derek Wolhowe. I appreciate you attending today, and yeah, reach out if you have any questions. Thanks, everyone.